Asian Boss Girl is brought to you by Anchor, an easy way to make your podcast and get it out into the world. It's free, has creation tools that allow you to record and edit right from your phone or computer, and will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can also make money from your podcast on Anchor with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Here at ABG, Asian Boss Girl, we're big fans of music and audio content. Spotify is one of our favorite platforms. They have a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're listening to right now. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcast so you never miss an episode. If you're a premium user, you can download episodes to listen to offline. And you can easily share what you're listening to with your friends on Instagram. Download the Spotify app, search for ABG, Asian Boss Girl, or browse podcasts in the Your Library tab. Make sure to follow us so you never miss an episode of Asian Boss Girl.
Welcome to ABG, Asian Boss Girl, a podcast for the modern-day Asian American woman. I'm Janet.
I'm Helen.
And I'm Mel.
Oh man, ladies, we are officially in season 6 and still in quarantine. So once again, we are recording from the comfort of each of our own homes. And by now, some of us hopefully are feeling a little more settled into this new temporary normal of staying at home and social distancing.
To be honest, though, I think we all still have our good days and our bad days, and that is perfectly okay. Even if you have roommates or a partner whom you live with, it can still be an incredibly lonely time, which is what we wanted to talk about today. So in collaboration with Bumble, today we'll talk about how we are dealing with loneliness in general and ways that we can connect with others.
All right, ladies, are you feeling lonely during this time? And what are your experiences with loneliness this past month?
So of the three of us, I am the only one who lives alone. So like if you talk about being physically alone, I'm literally alone like 24/7, right? Like we've now been quarantining for about a month. So I've literally seen people maybe a total of like 4 times, like once a week. I'll go grocery shopping and occasionally I go to the lobby to like pick up packages or mail. But other than that, I'm like literally physically alone. But we were kind of in talking about the concept of loneliness. I first started I was like, how do people really define loneliness, right? Mm-hmm. So I like went on Google and I was like, what's the definition? And I think there's a huge difference between being alone and being lonely, right? Like being alone means you're physically by yourself, but it's not associated necessarily with any type of positive or negative emotion. So the aspect of feeling lonely, it does mean that you are starting to feel a sense of sadness. I am a pretty introverted person and I like my alone time, but definitely I can tell when I'm experiencing actual periods of loneliness, which is like I'm not really necessarily happy so much with not having like another person around. Mm-hmm. And I would say for me personally, like I notice it more like when it gets dark. So in the evenings, luckily it's been, since we're now in like April, the days are a little bit longer. So, you know, you have daylight until a little bit later in the evening. But yeah, generally at night is when I start to feel more of that negative feeling of just being really kind of like alone and sad and overthinking.
Is it more because you're looking for someone to like maybe cuddle at night? Or why do you think it's different between like the daytime versus nighttime?
I don't think it's like physical contact that I'm craving. It's more like kind of activity-wise. If that makes sense. So it's like, and it's even just like having a meal by yourself, right? Like maybe it's because by that time I've already had 2 meals during the day kind of by myself. And it's at that point, then you're like, okay, this is another one. And it's like darker. I don't know, something about
it's like an accumulation of loneliness throughout the day.
Yeah, maybe
it kind of peaks at night.
I think it's an accumulation. I do think also it is a like physical space thing. I am a person, like in the past I've noticed that in different jobs, if I'm in an office setting that's really gloomy, it affects my mood. So I think like when there's like lack of actual light, like I do feel a little bit more depressed. For both of you ladies, you have one other person.
Yeah. I feel like there's been a lot of like change in my life this past month, from quitting my job at the beginning of the month to jumping right into ABG like 2 days later, and then going into quarantine mode like a week after that. And I think the things that I've been feeling this past month, I wouldn't outright label as loneliness, because what I'm feeling, I think, is more like the uncertainty that comes from like any big life change, and this like low grade of anxiety or depression just leading to like a lack of drive. And I feel like that's maybe something that it sounds like you're feeling too, Janet. But I feel like when it comes to loneliness, like you said, like I have Philip, and honestly I don't know if I would be as sane as I am right now without him here. But I think like this lack of drive that I'm feeling is a mix of both the uncertainty that I mentioned, but also a lack of connection with like a variety of thoughts and a variety of people. My introverted side and the person who is like becoming really introspective is like really happy that I'm living in these like thoughts that I've never had time to think about. But then my extroverted side is like, girl, you are super lonely. Like, you need to go out and connect with people.
Helen just brought some interesting points. I feel like you're like, it's like an identity crisis of feeling like your extrovertedness and your introvertedness is being pulled. But like Helen, I do have a roommate. So physically, I'm not alone. You know, we occupy the same space, and luckily, you know, we have dinners together every night, but we kind of do our own thing during lunch and breakfast. But when I feel alone or I feel lonely, I do feel lonely at night, like Janet. I think because I do have my own room. I don't like sleep with her in her bed. But when I'm about to sleep, I think that's when my mind just kind of goes into like more a fantasy mode and like think about longing for a companion or a partner to like, you know, kind of wind down with, just to have someone to snuggle with. And I do think I have really great snuggle buddies, such as my We Bare Bears and my little stuffed dog that I use every night. But I did notice like a habit that I have is like I like holding on to something or maybe I'm hoping for someone as I'm like, watching my shows or like reading or just ending the night. So I think I'm just like longing for like or maybe a romantic partner. So that's when I feel lonely. But also like Janet, I Googled what lonely means because I'm just like, what is the real definition of loneliness? And it said that it's feeling empty or alone or craving human interaction. And I actually believe that, you know, just because you're single, that doesn't mean you're necessarily lonely, right? I do think you could feel full and like comfortable being by yourself because like my introverted side is like super happy to be like confined in a space. And my friends are like, one of my friends is like, I'm so surprised how you're not going crazy yet in your house. I'm like, no, because I actually love being home. Like on the weekends, you guys know that I could stay in my pajamas all day and watch shows. And I think if I were to ask myself if this is the type of loneliness I feel outside of quarantine, or has my loneliness felt different in quarantine versus outside, I would say it's actually the same, like, to be honest. So have you guys felt like a difference in your loneliness being in quarantine versus not being in it?
It's very different than when you're like isolated, right? Because it's literally like days on days of no real human interaction. And in my past, though, I can think of like a couple of experiences, like when I went to Kenya and then when I was in Miami, when I knew that, okay, for the next couple of months, I'm going to be in a setting that's outside of my normal day-to-day life. And in fact, it's going to be kind of challenging and it's going to be a little uncomfortable, and I'm not going to be around people that are familiar and in a setting that's familiar to me. So I kind of liken this experience to that. Like, I feel like that was like, what, maybe 10 weeks. So it's like about 2 months. One of the biggest things that I found, I'm seeing a pattern of how I kind of cope. And one thing that helps me is to become more rigid about a routine. Generally, I tend to start going to bed earlier and then trying to get up earlier and just, you know, I'm not usually a breakfast person, but now I have like breakfast every day. And it's just doing as much as I can to, I think, create a sense of like balance for myself, because I know that I'm going to be dealing with negative emotions, and I'm much more well prepared to let those emotions pass and to manage them if I feel more balanced, if that makes sense. How about you ladies?
Yeah, no, I feel like this type of loneliness that I'm feeling, it's hard to kind of like break it apart between the sort of like transformation that I feel like I really am going through after such a big life change event. Like, that's happening, but then at the same time I'm being forced to stay inside. And I think naturally outside of quarantine, I usually have like my calendar filled with like events and meetings and like all of these things where I'm just like go, and I'm not even like really thinking that, oh, hey, I'm fulfilling this need of my personality to have social interaction versus it's just there. And now that it's not there, I think a part of me is like, okay, I'm going to focus on this transformation side of me that really thinks I'm actually more introverted. And I think the sadness that I'm feeling is more like my extroverted side that's just like, no, this is inherently you. Like, you're a social friggin' creature. You need to be out there. So this type of loneliness, I feel like, is a little bit different from what I've been seeing in just like outside of just being in quarantine the whole time.
Yeah.
But the other time I've definitely felt like real loneliness before. And that's when I was working for 3 months in Spain, and I'll never, ever, ever forget this feeling of not having a friend within like 1,000 miles from you. of being like out on the street with your 3 suitcases and you're waiting for keys to an apartment and it's after business hours and no one is showing up and you only have like a phone number for one person in all of Spain to call. And then the phone connection is bad and like they're not picking up. I just remember that was like the loneliest I've ever felt. And even like on a Friday night, I remember going to a bar, but instead of bringing a friend, like I brought a journal and I just sit there and like journal. And when you're like surrounded by people, you wouldn't think that you are lonely, but like Janet said, it's like the state of mind that you're in, right?
Yeah.
You can be surrounded by so many people, but if you're not connecting with anyone and no one really understands you to like the core of you, then you're just like in a state of loneliness and wanting to isolate out of like discomfort.
Yeah.
So that's definitely like the one time I truly felt lonely. And I remember like going back to my my apartment and I went on like meetups.com and on Facebook and I was like, who's an expat that's like in Madrid right now that I can hang out with? And I found like no one. I just went to sleep that night.
I feel like what you're experiencing, like that is true feeling of like being alone, like loneliness. Like that is, for me, like that is a definition. And I remember when you told me about that story, I was like, man, because you're very like, you're self-sufficient, you're a very gritty person. But to go through all of that, I feel like I would have been really broken in that moment. To be like, I feel very like, I can't even ask for help. And it takes courage to ask for help too. So I can only imagine like even now, like the type of loneliness you're feeling, it's like a very different type. There's very different kinds. Like their experience in Spain was like the epitome of loneliness and being alone. But right now I feel like you're going through like a transformative period. Because I do think loneliness can be beneficial. Like for example, I know we talked about Helen before, like I would love for you want to go back to Boston for a few days just to be with yourself, be with your family, kind of think about things. But like a lot of other people right now are going through those same feelings. Like they thrive and like are able to process in certain environments, but aren't able to do so because they're stuck in quarantine.
Yeah. No, I think that loneliness can be something that is incredibly freaking scary, but also like very beautiful because that is a time for you to really just sit in your thoughts, as like scary as they are, because like every day we are moving so fast, we don't get to do that. So when you are finally feeling lonely and physically just like alone, that is the time of like true work. So I try to remind myself of that too.
Oh, yeah.
That I crave connection, but it's okay to be lonely too.
I think what's interesting is also that when you're feeling particularly alone, so it's like the connection with yourself is going to be unique, but then also, yeah, I do wonder like the conversations that you're having with people now and the connections you're making with other people in times of like crisis. I feel like there's something about that setting also helps to develop more authentic connections as well. Do you guys feel that with some of the conversations you're having? Or
yeah, I think right now, especially since the whole nation's pretty much on lockdown or going through the same pandemic, it's like I think people crave to feel connection or like that feeling of you understand me. I think all of us feel very in the same boat right now. So in some ways, like whether it's you're reaching out to an old friend again or like making connections online, like everyone's kind of like in the same boat to some degree. So like there's a level of understanding there, like right off the bat. But speaking of like, connection or just like combating our different types of loneliness, I think Janet, you mentioned like you do a routine, like all these things like to really help you like get grounded. Helen, what things have you been doing to like, I guess, combat your loneliness?
I've been trying to keep myself company, I guess, by like journaling and reading and doing a lot of just like introspective work. And I feel like that's like I'm actually leaning into my loneliness versus combating it.
Yeah, which is good.
But I guess because I think connecting with people in a way that's beyond the surface level is the only way to really combat true like loneliness, right?
to have true connection.
Yeah, journaling, I think it's really important. But I think like talking to you ladies, FaceTiming my sister every day is really important. And even like watching home workout videos and doing those, because it feels like you're part of a community that's bigger than just yourself. And watching like shows and being part of the conversation and all of that has been important to keeping me sort of like sane.
Yeah.
From feeling like I'm just thinking all of these very doom and gloom thoughts. How about you, Mel?
I think like similar to you, I feel like even though we're in quarantine, I want to make sure like I guess my personal growth or my personal self is still like not 100 but still pushing forward to be the best version of myself. So that is really like, even though I feel like shit sometimes, like literally that's me like finding time to journal or calling you guys like hey, I really feel like crap right now, do you mind just talking to me as a friend? Because I know we always do business and we're like always busy every day, but like to have conversations with you guys one-on-one as a friend, it really helps me. Reading self-help books had put me in a better mindset. Like I'm reading a Brene Brown book right now. So just like how can I find ways to work on myself during this time to like use this time as like, bettering yourself? Because like it just reminds me back of like whenever I go through a breakup, it's like those moments of really being lonely. It's like, how can I make this time beneficial to me as much as I can? So there's one aspect of like personal self-growth. Let me make sure to work on that. But honestly, I say this a lot all the time on my Instagram story. I've been literally obsessed with Korean dramas lately. And after so many recommendations from like a bunch of the listeners from ABG, I started crash landing on you. And I will 100% say I am totally emotionally invested in this drama, in the relationship. And to some degree, I feel like the part of me that's longing for a romantic connection, I'm getting fulfilled somewhat just by watching this drama. And it's just like bringing up so many more like emotions and feelings out of me that I haven't felt in so long. But at the same time, it's making me think about maybe I am longing for a romantic connection. So, I find myself like, in between episodes, like pulling out my phone and just swiping, on dating apps. For me, like, I'm also well aware, like, this is a story. It's definitely like, it's fake, whatever, but it does tug on this like inkling of maybe I do want to make a romantic connection. And like, obviously we're in quarantine. So I do think it's an excuse for me to like, really open myself up to online dating more,
Yeah. For me, I have not been on a dating app since 2014. That's when like the first dating apps came out. And that's when Philip and I were kind of like on and off in our relationship. My manager at the time, actually, at my job, so she was single at the time, and she was the one that made me download a dating app. She has 2 kids now. She married her like childhood friend who's like a firefighter now, and she always talks about him taking her around her fire truck. But in any case, I just remember like thinking that apps were so kind of like skeevy, because it reminds me of like Hot or Not, when you're like swiping on people and ranking people, or in school when you're passing around notes with a list of boys and kind of like ranking who you think is the hottest and all of that. So I just felt like it was so diminishing what you're doing to humans. You're like, you get out of my face is what it feels like, because you're like literally swiping them away from your screen. But I will say that I think the part of me that loves efficiency is like, this completely makes sense. Like, dating apps make sense. All of us are so busy now with like our full-time jobs, and then we also have like the privilege now of having passion projects. So everyone is doing something with their own time, right? So it does make sense to me. And recently I signed up for Bumble, and I was expecting it to be like a dating site, but they have these other 2 functions on there, one for a BFF and one for networking. And I signed up for those 2, and I think it's so cool that they have that, because come to think of it, like, humans don't just want to date for like sexual purposes. They want to date to like meet friends and have connections and build connections. So like, I think about even when I was in Spain, right? I literally was like, I don't know what site to sign up for. I don't know where to find people. And all I knew was like meetups.com and Facebook. But yeah, I've been very surprised that this type of thing is sort of out there and available for people to use. What are your ladies' experience with dating apps? It's very different from mine, I'm sure.
I think unlike you, Jen and I didn't have a 6-year gap on the dating apps.
It's changed a lot, I know.
It has. Hey, Jen, you want to start? I thought you have more stories.
Yeah. Yeah, I signed up for the apps when they first came down, I think in like 2012 or 13. This is like 7 to 8 years of online dating that I've kind of gone through. And I think similar to Helen, back then there was a little bit of a stigma, or it wasn't as like mainstream. But I had just moved back to LA from New York, and had also moved out to like the LA area properly, because prior to that I was living in like Orange County in Southern California. And I was like in my mid-20s at the time. So my state of mind for dating back then was really very open-minded. I can remember still like the way my thought process when I would swipe, I was just so open to like any type of person. If I found you attractive, I didn't really care what your job was, as long as they didn't have like red flags that went off, like you didn't look like someone that was gonna murder me, or yeah, like I just, it was very, and it was really casual. So I actually did meet up with like a lot of different types of people, and I went on a lot of different dates, and I had a lot of like things that you wouldn't really call relationships, but like dates with the same people. And then, but I've seen like a progression of that, right? So I feel like that was like 7 to 8 years ago. I was dating very casually, very openly. And then I would say about a couple of years into that, I started looking for more serious, substantial relationships. So then I could see that my like, not literal filtering on the apps, but like the way that I would think through someone I would swipe left or right on became more like rigid. And then specifically in the last 8 months, even more specific, I'm looking for like a life partner. So I swipe right a lot less frequently. But I would describe my like background with dating apps as in the following pattern. And I feel like a lot of other women I've spoken with, probably guys too, have a similar thing where I feel like I'll have a couple of months where I'm like really vigilant and I'm super active and I might be on multiple apps and I'm just like really swiping pretty constantly and I'm trying to engage in conversations. And usually what happens is like maybe I'll go out on a date and it doesn't work out. And then I get really like not disenchanted, but like kind of jaded a little bit. And then I just like delete everything. And then it's like I'll have a couple of weeks where I'm just like absolutely nothing. And then eventually I get stir crazy enough where I just get back on. So there's this kind of like cycle that I go through, and I feel like a couple of other people have shared similar kind of activities. I don't know. What's your experience, Mel, as someone who's kind of been more active on it recently?
Let me think. I feel like I do have a pattern in behavior as well. Like when I first started, I was like, oh no, like some dating apps are just known to hook up. And like for me, like I'm not the hookup type. And like I would say like I'm definitely picky when it comes to like choosing a partner. So I'm even more picky on the apps because it's just like I'm more skeptical when it first, came out. But then like I had periods of like, hearing my girlfriends say like a lot of my close friends have found their significant others in long-term relationships from dating apps. So I know it's like it works. Also, I watched The Bachelor, so I do think this type of love, like dating apps will work, So then I get into periods of my life where I'm just like, I'm going to find the one on the dating app. Like I really truly believe like this could be it. Maybe I'm like a hopeless romantic. So then I go on the apps and I'm swiping. I'm just like, maybe this could work or whatever. And then obviously it doesn't work out. And we do have conversations, but like it just doesn't really follow through. And like, I have a track record of like going on one date a year with someone, like on a physical date. I think it's because like naturally I just feel very like I am picky, maybe I'm really picky to select or to swipe right on someone, but also very like nervous to meet someone in person because you never know, as a woman, the safety issues and all this stuff. So I'm just more nervous, but I have seen like lately I am a little more bored, so I am more active on the app and swiping. But I think it's to tell myself to be a little bit more open-minded to like people. It's hard, when you're like so set in your ways, like how can I be more open-minded and like how can I like not judge right off the bat from a conversation we're having?
Yeah. Janet, I know you went through this period of time where I think you were dating like a different guy a week for a couple of weeks because I think you had like a therapy session and then you were like, okay, I think that maybe I'm being too picky and I needed to kind of just like put myself out there and try and find someone. But I know you also mentioned that you had like a lot of these filters on people because you do want to like find someone who might be you might be ready to marry once you meet them kind of a thing, right? So like during that period of time, did you just swipe more or what was switching in your mind for you to?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, so here's my thing. I feel like when I'm swiping, it's kind of like a series of events that happen, and in each of those events you get a little bit more rigid, I suppose. But if I'm going to swipe right, it's like Mel saying, if I'm already pretty specific, I'm not swiping right that much. But then even of the people I swipe right, then it's like of those that swipe right on me that I actually connect with, there's a pool, right? And then of those people that now we both mutually swipe, sometimes I'll go back around and I'm like, I don't know that I actually would want to if you started a conversation with me, I might, but if I have to start the conversation, I might like decide that I'm not as inclined, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like that number goes even smaller to the people that you're actually going to start a conversation with. And then of those people who start the conversation with, it's like who's actually then going to respond back, and in the conversation it goes well enough to lead to a meetup. What I found was when I tried to be more open-minded is I would just push myself to anyone that we did have a mutual connection with. I would initiate the conversation. And if I was asked out, I would go out on a date. It's being more open to like at least the first round, they pass your kind of like your filter of things that you're looking for. And then the second or third rounds where sometimes you might question, just be open-minded and let them have like 1 to 3 dates before you make any type of like decision. And actually one of the things that my therapist was made a recommendation for in terms of keeping more open-minded, but without relinquishing your standards, is if you are looking for someone seriously, open up the distance that you're like the physical distance. Usually how there's like the filter for the mileage. So instead of changing your standards for like education or religion or whatever it is, just a bigger pool of people, knowing that you'll be more committed to like I'm willing to drive and I'm willing to whatever if you're really looking for someone serious.
Wow, that's a really good tip from your therapist.
Yeah. I actually took that advice. I think Janet might have mentioned this to me privately. So I totally opened up my distance on my dating apps. And I think I told you this last night. So I had a conversation with our friend Mimi, and she's like, we're talking about like age difference, and I was like, I always have a preference. Like I have been having a preference to date older men because like my past 2 exes have been like 1 or 2 years younger than me, and I was like, you know what? Maybe I need to date someone older. But I was like, maybe like, but she was like, Mel, when you hit the 30s, the 20s sound really great. Just FYI. And I was like, oh, okay. So for some reason, and with that advice or that comment, I kind of brought down my age range just by 2 years, just to see what would happen. And then I refreshed my dating app, and I was like, whoa, there's a lot more options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But for the conversation, like, okay, so Jen, I think we talked about it offline, or I don't know if you mentioned it earlier, but like I've been trying to be a little bit more open-minded in terms of like maybe swiping right a little bit more. But I'm running into this issue where like, okay, so I was like, cool, I will be open-minded with swiping right. So I matched up with this guy. We're talking. I was like, great, like, you know, it's conversation's going. But I realized like I keep responding back, and I'm always asking him a question. And they just give me a long response and doesn't ever throw back a question to me. And part of me is like, one, should I keep giving this a shot? Because I'm like, I want to be open-minded, but at the same time, I'm like, you're not giving me anything, dude. So it's like, even though you're being open-minded in terms of your selections and your preferences, once the conversation starts, you're just like, dude, this not working.
Yeah, no, I think that's been something for me that's been kind of challenging is I love that like on Bumble, it's like the woman makes the first move and it kind of flips it. But I think for those of us who might still like in my preference in the ideal conversation, it should be both people come to the table ready to like curious and wanting to learn about each other. Right. And what I'm finding is that like I'll start the conversation, but they just answer it and they're not really tossing it back to me. Yeah. And maybe I wonder if it's because the guy is on the premise that we're in a setting now where the woman should be in control. So you're driving the entirety of the conversation. So for a tip for the guys out there, if you're on Bumble, I think it's totally reasonable to assume that the woman's going to take some initiative. But I think you want to, at the very minimum, come still with your own initiative, right? And show interest. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe it's because that guy was not interested. But then I also don't know why he matched with me. So...
Oh my gosh, this is such like a mind fuck.
Yeah.
Of like, what are your intentions and why don't you like me? I actually I started a conversation with someone yesterday. I matched with someone on the BFF side.
Okay, I want to hear, because I know on Bumble there's like they give you like really good like openers. What was your opener?
So this is the first time I've ever like I guess connected with someone. So it's kind of cool when they like put your two faces together and it's like boom, like you made a match, and I'm like, oh cool. And it says like you have 24 hours to make the first move, and it says like introduce yourself, right? And there's a little alert that pops up that says need a good opener. And I didn't know that Bumble does that for you, but I really appreciated that was available because I'm such a noob at this. I would have just done like the wave emoji or like hello, like what do you do for work or something like that. The one that I chose was towards the bottom, and it says, do you ever talk to yourself? When? Because I think that's just like a weird one to start with, and I didn't want to throw like what do you like to do for fun? I wanted to start with a weird one, but then I just felt like I was hitting on her a little bit. But at the same time, it was kind of empowering to just feel like I sent her a message, and if she messages me back, fine. If not, then it expires now in 8 hours. So
oh shoot,
yeah, we'll see where that goes.
Well, congrats, Helen.
Thank you. My first potential rejection. I love it.
One of the hardest parts, I think, is starting the conversation, right? And
I agree. Oh my gosh.
I will admit that I have been lazy enough at times to just do the high wave emoji, and then I'm waiting for the guy. And part of my thinking sometimes in that is that I want to see which guy thinks is like going to put in the effort enough to like respond. And if he wouldn't anyway, then maybe he's not like willing to put in effort. But I think that's a flawed way of thinking, because if we had already created a relationship, fine, I'm looking for effort. But at this point, we don't know each other. There's no reason for him to like want, so I recognize the flaw in that in my approach in the past. I have found that like I really like that feature in Bumble where they have like suggestions for opening lines. The last one that I used was, if you had to stay one age for the rest of your life, which would it be? And the reason why I chose that one is because they do have a variety of them. And I liked, Helen, how you chose one, because you're like, oh, it's kind of like quirky and cute, and you kind of just want to see. It's like a nice alternative to like a boring intro. If you chose an age in the past, are you someone who tends to live in the past more? and then if you chose an age in the future. Because once he answered, he said, "Hi, Janet, I would say 30. How about you?" And then I asked him, like, with the thinking behind his answer, right? So for me, it was like a good opportunity to have not only a deeper conversation, but like to learn something about the person and to get a feeling of like how they are, how they perceive the world, how are they an optimist?
Psychoanalyze them.
Yeah, psychoanalyze them, exactly.
Yes. So what did he say?
Yeah, what was the reason for 30?
What did you say?
So I said, I'm going to go with 40. Here's to hoping I'll be wiser and everything more. And then he said, I like that neither of us went lower than 30. So like to a younger age, I guess.
I see.
So he was probably also thinking the same thing. And he said, why 40? And I said, I hear that's like a golden year for women, so age 40. I don't know. I figure that'll be an age where I hope to have started a family, and I'm curious to see how my career may morph. And then I asked him, why 30 for you? And he's like, that sounds cool. Your career can morph. Okay, blah, blah, blah. And then he said, for me, it's because you really start to come into your own at 30. You know who you are, more stability. You can take care of yourself, but at the same time, you still have the freedom and opportunity to try new things and have fun. So I think it does share quite a bit about the kind of person they are and what they value.
He gave a really
Both
good
good
response.
answers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have. Yeah, that's a good answer.
I agree. 30 is like the year where you're just like, I don't give a shit about anything, and I will do things for myself and my own happiness, and you really do sort of like find yourself beyond 30. So I can see where he's coming from.
Yeah. And that's why I'm excited for next year.
Yeah.
Wait, Mel, how about you? Did you use one of the opening lines?
Yeah, like you, Janet, I feel like that's the thing I struggle with the most. Is like, what am I gonna say? Like, hello, because like, I hate when conversations are so like you guys know me. I love banter. Like when it's just a hello, I'm just like, ugh. But I do like simplicity and being like, basic here and there. But I love banter and witty banter and just like kind of having this back and forth. So in like my previous experience on dating apps, like when I had to start the conversation without like a given opener, I'm always trying to steer the conversation in a way to be like, let's play the question game. That sounds so lame, but like to some degree where we could like actually like have these type of conversations based off like these openers. So I'm really happy that Bumble has these features.
What's the question game?
Oh, this sounds so high school, but I'd be like, yeah, so anyways, like, that's great that you do blah, blah, blah. I would ask either like, is there something you always wish to ask? Like someone on the dating apps, or like, let's ask each other questions, or like, let's like, I'll give you 3 questions to ask, or just something like that to like give them an opener to like do other things and just talk about what we do for a living. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I see.
Like, do you remember?
Like, let's get to it.
Yeah. Like, do you remember back in college or in high school when you're on the phone with like a guy you kind of like or a crush? You're like, okay, like, no, you ask the question. Like let's ask each other like 10 questions.
Let's learn about each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting to know each other.
See.
So obviously, I used to try to steer the conversation that way because I feel like with the, what do you do for a living? Oh, I live here. How old are you? Blah, blah, blah. It just feels very generic. So like when I saw Bumble's features, I'm like, yes, thank you. Like you're giving me something to work with.
What's your like go-to first line? Copy paste. What do you copy and paste?
Fuck.
Or does it depend? Do you curate it based on their profile?
I curate based on the profile. Like I try to do something like a witty remark to something based on their profile, or like one thing I tried doing in the past that I did copy and paste was like, what are 3 things you always have in your shopping cart or like in your fridge? Because you guys know me, I love food. So like I think food tells a lot about someone. If someone was like, oh, I always just have this because like I don't really care, I'm like, oh, that's like, food's a big part of my life, so I don't know how that's gonna affect this. So that was my copy and paste answer.
I like that. That's a good one.
Right? So for Bumble, I've said, I used 2. One of them I said, I used the one, if you could travel to any city on a first date, where would you go? Because there's like a fantasy aspect of it. Like I want to like, what if you lived in this world? Like where would you go? And like, where would you sweep me off my feet and take me to, just kidding.
I feel like any answer you'd be like, oh yes.
Not
San Diego. Oh.
Not necessarily. Because the guy, so this
Vegas,
is the one.
Yes.
Well, this guy, he answered like, he said it was a good response, but then he didn't throw it back. So I was like, oh.
What was his response?
He's like, I'm probably supposed to pick somewhere romantic, haha. But I say Chicago because I lived there for a while and I know the city so well. So I feel like I could probably pick a perfect place there. And I was like, that's a good response.
That is a good response.
That's a good response, yeah.
I was almost going to say if someone said something more like cliched like Paris or Tokyo, I don't know if that would be kind of like, But I liked his reasoning because he knew the city, so he could give you a good date experience.
Yeah, that's
Mel's
true.
like, oh, I would have fallen for that for sure. Paris?
Oh, it depends. If you were to say something like, it's like, I'll take you to my parents' house. I'm like, okay, that's fucking way too much. You know what I mean?
I see. Keeping it more general. Janet, what is your go-to first line?
My go-to first line. The one I've been using more frequently this week is like, what was the highlight of your week? So that's kind of
that's nice.
That's kind
relevant.
of generic, but yeah, but it's also, and it, once again, I think it does, because it's open enough that it tells you about them based on what they select, right?
Yeah.
Because it's such a broad, like they could talk about anything. So
What's the best thing that you've seen in a profile? I have something as I was scrolling through. He said, and this was actually back in like 2014 when I was on a dating app. So, and I still remember this line. This is how good it was. And now everyone's going to take this. It said, I can cook 1 minute rice in 59 seconds.
girl, I've seen that in so many profiles.
Oh, wait, really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. When I saw that, I was like, who is this man?
That's pretty funny though.
That is such a good line.
But I could see, because
yeah.
Helen likes efficiency
Yeah.
and
Yes. Efficiency and dad jokes. Asian Boss Girl is brought to you by Skillshare. In this episode, we are focused on the topic of dating. Looking for activities to do together as a couple, maybe some hobbies or skills you'd both like to develop, or if you're single, taking the time to focus on developing your own interests is always important. Skillshare offers classes, content, and community workshops so we can all feel a little more connected to ourselves and each other. Explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and get lost in creativity with classes from Skillshare.
they offer a wide variety of classes like creating a perfect morning routine or meditating for beginners. Or spend your time learning new skills with classes like creative writing, fundamentals of DSLR photography, and illustrated lettering. Skillshare classes are taught by industry icons and experts, so you get to learn from real creators.
Explore your creativity at Skillshare.com/ABG and get 2 free months of premium membership. That's right, Skillshare is offering Asian Boss Girl listeners 2 free months of unlimited access to thousands of classes. Head to Skillshare.com/ABG. One thing we really value at ABG is taking care of ourselves physically, mentally, and emotionally. We're happy to partner with Care of, a wellness brand that makes it easy to maintain your health goals with a customized vitamin plan that supports long-term health. You take an online quiz with questions about your diet, health goals, lifestyle, and Care of will recommend a list of vitamins and supplements just for you. You can also adjust your pack at any time, so what you get is up to you.
For me, I wanted to focus on brain health, energy, and digestion, and also selected that my diet was largely plant-based. Their quiz is so cute. I definitely recommend checking it out. They come in daily packs that are convenient for on-the-go lifestyles. You can throw them in your purse or your work bag or even your gym bag. The packs are also eco-friendly, which we really appreciate. It's made up of compostable films. Care of is offering ABG listeners 50% off your first order. Go to takecareof.com and enter code ABG50. That's takecareof.com, code ABG50.
Okay, so speaking of dating apps and your opening lines and stuff, but have you guys ever moved the conversation or these potential matches to a video chat? Because I think especially now we're in quarantine, all the dates now are virtual. So have you guys even tried a video chat?
I haven't gotten to a place yet where I see the video chat function.
Yeah.
Actually, I do see it, but oh wait, can I only click it if they?
Once she responds.
I'm calling her.
Oh my god!
Oh my gosh! I think I just called her. Holy shit! Okay, so you can. So when you're in the chat function after you've connected with someone, you can hit on the camera, and that will call them. Holy molies!
Yes.
Okay, it just said I tried to call her. Let's see if she responds because she has 8 hours to
She's
respond.
This girl
I
is
just gave her,
coming
a little
on
poke,
so
a
strong.
little tap on the shoulder.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Dude.
So yes, I have just tried it, but have you ladies tried it?
I've been intending, even before we started quarantine, to really vet out people more before I go on to in-person dates, because I think that my general approach has been, and I know that this is other people do this too sometimes, you would almost prefer to just meet in person first to test out the chemistry. But what happens is then it's a lot of effort out of your schedule and your time to physically meet with the person, right? And so a nice in between is doing a phone call, or even better yet, a video chat, so that you can kind of get a gauge for each other and see if it makes sense then to take the time to meet in person. I just haven't had that opportunity yet, but that is something that kind of, I feel like in a more evolved approach to dating that I want to start integrating into my behavior. And I do like that Bumble just has that like directly in the app. So once I get to a point with my next connection with the person, I will want to initiate a video chat before like an in-person meeting. Have you tried it yet, Mel?
Janet's actually the one that inspired me to kind of like do a phone call before going on a physical date, because I think more so than Janet, I actually don't like going out physically because I feel like I like being at home alone and being with myself. So like that's a like added effort to go out and meet someone. So to be honest, when I heard about like when all of us are in quarantine and like everyone started dating and I see all these virtual dates, I was actually more inclined to be on the dating apps. I'm like, oh cool, like this actually benefits me because like I'm actually so down for a video chat. So previously to the quarantine, I did have one like call with a guy and I really enjoyed it before going on a date, and that worked really well. So with quarantine, I am very open to a video chat because like honestly I could be in my pajamas and just like wear makeup and just be comfortable in my own setting. I'm down. The thing I love about the Bumble feature with the video and the phone call is that like you don't have to give out your number to someone that you don't really feel comfortable with, because like that's another like just a security thing or like feeling like safe. So the fact that like you could just do the call within the app, I feel that's like another added layer of like security as like a woman, you know? So I actually am very open, and I do love the feature of a video and like a phone call component to the chats for Bumble.
Yeah, that's actually a really, really good point, because I didn't realize that, you don't have to give out your number in order to have like a phone conversation or a video chat with them. And you will always feel safer once you've kind of like seen the person move around. So you also know that you're not being like catfished either.
Exactly.
Because it could be like a completely different person that just sent a photo, but even if you call them, like they could still be a completely different person on the other side of the line, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if dating apps do this, but instead of having like a photo, I feel like if there was a feature where in your profile there was a video clip of you just saying like, hi, my name is Helen, excited to meet you, I am looking for whatever, like that could give so much more, just like an indication of like who they are and their mannerisms, and even like the volume of their voice and the intonations of their voice. Like you learn a lot more from people just from like a video on their profile versus like a static photo that is really thoughty and thirsty looking.
Yeah. None of us have actually, or Mel has had one video phone call, right? Or no, I'm sorry, has one phone call. But let's just say, so we do plan to kind of do video chats now before we kind of go on dates. If hypothetically we were to go on a video chat date, let's talk about what would be like your ideal video chat date. So Mel, what type of video chat would you suggest, or how would you treat it?
I would probably treat it as much as I can, like simulate like a you grab a drink with someone. So I'd probably have a glass of wine or something I would drink on a date, and like kind of just like how we're like on the Zoom right now, just like interaction. I know some of my friends or some of our friends have been having those Netflix and chill parties as their date, but part of me is like, the purpose of a first date really is to get to know each other. So the fact that we're watching something, I feel very distracted and not like, I want all attention on this conversation. So I'd probably, get a glass of wine, put on the makeup, wear my pajama pants so they can't see, but then like wear like something like kind of cute and simple on top to just kind of like, I guess like just to mimic a real date as much as I can.
Yeah. How about you, Janet?
I was going to say that I would hope to treat this video chat like I would treat a first date. For me, I think I've been trying to move more to daytime, like coffee dates versus say like happy hours. But I would call out the importance of treating it like a date, because I would be very turned off if a guy very sloppily like instead of it being like, hey, at this time, this date, if he was just like, hey, are you available in the next 15 minutes? And say he called me, and say it's like late at night and he's like in bed and just like selfie camming himself, that to me would be very unattractive. Like I would, because that feels very like convenience based, I guess, versus treating this like, it's like, a thing we schedule. And I would, trying to treat it kind of like coffee. Maybe I actually would prefer maybe like a daytime type of a chat, and then have it feel not super formal, but like, you should kind of get done up in some way. And I think it is a reflection of the guy too, like how careful or careless he is in terms of like the effort that he put into what is the background of his video chat, like did he put into in something like that. So and I think the goal of it still, like a date, is to have conversation and to get a sense of the person and to get to know them. How about you, Helen?
I think for me it's a little bit different, because I'm not really trying to find my future like baby daddy from this app. It's more the BFF side, and the networking side is what I'm on. I would probably like put some makeup on, make sure my hair is not like a complete mess, but I'd probably wear the same like PJs, just super chill and like, hey, let's just chat for a little bit. And I'd probably set it for maybe like 6 p.m. So like right before dinner, so that you have kind of a reason to get off the phone. Like, what about duration, right? If you're at home and clearly you have nothing else to do, like how do you stop a conversation? So that could be a means to be like, okay, it's 7 p.m. I'm going to go make dinner now. Like, great talking to you, right? I could see like the coffee lunchtime would be a good time to do it. But I feel like nighttime feels more like a wind down. So it's more like relaxed and like you can see the sunset and it just feels like more of a connection that way. I don't know, guys. I've never done this before, so I don't know what I'm talking about.
No, you bring a good point because like another thing is like I would actually avoid eating like on the app because I feel like on the video, because what if they could hear you chewing and stuff through the thing? I don't know, just like keep it just to liquids, you know?
Yeah. I think I'm also thinking about like the lighting in my place for a video chat is like nicer during the day. And I would do a coffee, but you could also do as a nice excuse out. You can say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I have another meeting." Right, like I have another chat or something to go into.
Janet's clearly experienced.
Yeah. Well, what are some things that you feel like you're experiencing with the apps where I know, Mel, you had mentioned before, it's like this mindset of if I'm swiping right on someone, that this is the person and I have to like become super invested with them. Because like I kind of felt that way like as I was swiping also. For me, I thought I would be swiping right on like a lot of people because I'm like, okay, I'm just here to make friends. But I realized that I'm also very selective and only want to commit to the people that I like really think I'm going to have a connection with. And it's kind of limited.
Yeah, it's hard. I think for me, it's just like, it's kind of like what Janet mentioned, like, you know, like widening your preferences and like your distance is one thing, like little things that like you could maybe expand your mind on. For me, it's just being more forgiving of myself and for them. Like, for example, like I'm being very transparent. Like there's sometimes when I see a photo, I'm like, okay, that's okay here. And then you go down the other photo, you're like, oh, I'm not really attracted to this photo or whatever. But at the same time, it's like, that is just one photo. Like that out of maybe out of the batch, you're like, I actually find this photo really attractive. Maybe that is like, that's part of who he is, or like that's one element. And like I think we are harsh on the dating apps because we concentrate on the physical aspect of the photo, right? But for me, if I actually find like an element of his profile, like he said something really funny, I'm like, okay, cool, like this person, it shows a little bit more of his personality, so I'm more willing to swipe right on these profiles. Like I'm trying to go easier than how I usually am because I feel like I'm being a little unfair. So like I try to read more about what they're writing about versus just looking at their photos instead. And like I think another thing is like trying to be more like open-minded also in the conversation. Like there are times where I feel like I get bored and I lose patience really quick, so I'm just like, oh, I'm over it. But trying to be less over it and be like, all right, let me keep pushing this conversation forward, because like I'm really am the type to just give up after one boring hello. I'm like, okay, I'm done. Like I don't want to talk. like I'm very like, okay, like I get over it super quickly. So just like let me keep throwing bones to see how I feel, and I'll give it back to them and like keep like just throwing the conversation out.
Yeah, I would agree with Mo. I think it's just kind of trying to be more open-minded, not without like lowering your standards, right? So if you have certain things that you're red flags about, like don't compromise things that you know are going to be really important to you. But if it's a small thing, okay. So I'm going to say like I am a pretty big like when it comes to text in a profile, if someone makes like a grammatical error, I know we talked about this because Mel, you're like, grammar's not really your thing. It's not a thing that I judge people, but with guys, it's a thing where if he misspells something or if he says something, I'm like, usually I'd be like, oh, it's a little bit of a turn off for me, right? But now I'm like, okay, it could just be a typo, like, and then you just kind of push. Like that's like a small thing, right? Or if to your point, like another thing that usually for me is a turn off is like, oh my God, he has like festival pics. And because I'm like, oh, our lifestyle is not the same. But what if it was like one pic that he had, and as long as the other pics feel like they represent activities that I feel related to, like that could be something I could potentially overlook, right? I'm saying this out loud. As I'm saying this, I'm like kind of telling myself too, the next time I go back into the app, that I should just kind of be a little more open-minded. Because Mel, I think you're right. Like when you're kind of talking through like the small, like you don't know if it was just that instance or if the context of that person.
But I will say that if there's like 3 typos within 3 messages, red flag for sure.
No, for sure. I think another thing to think about is like I try to figure out like, okay, in person, like there's a lot of guys I actually find attractive in person that I probably would swipe left on. And so just like wondering like I feel like there is definitely chemistry in person when you have conversation. So like if I could read if something in their profile that sparks some like, okay, a little bit of like wit, I'm like, yeah, I'll be more than willing to give this a shot, because like you never really know. And like I have so many friends tell me like, Mel, just be open-minded. So I feel like if I just like literally be open-minded and not put so much weight of like, this is the one, even when I'm chatting with them, not thinking like, are you the one? Like, do I want to commit to you? Like, this is something like oh, that's something that's not something my husband would do or some shit like that. Like that type of mindset, just to fix that and be like, hey, if anything, I want to have at least a good conversation, or maybe like I want to have a good hour of entertainment.
Well, I think a lot of people want the like ultimatum of like a marriage or an engagement or like a boyfriend from these apps, right? And it sounds like it's really draining almost to always have these conversations and watch out for typos and just waves and hellos and have conversation die. But what else are you ladies getting from these apps? Like, what do you see as a form of like success that you're getting if it's not those ultimatums?
Honestly, like even the dates I've been on that haven't been successful, quote unquote, like I think the fact that like I was able to put myself out there on a personal level to meet someone, like a really great person, and it didn't actually work out romantically. I was like, oh, I actually like am very proud of myself for putting myself out there, to have the courage to like try and pursue something, because you never know. Like, and that the guys I've been on the dates with, they've been really great. We just haven't been like a chemistry romantic match, but I had a really good time with them, and it helps me like kind of determine, like pick out what I want in the future more, because like I could see myself fixing my bad dating habits as I'm going on these dates, if that makes any sense.
You feel like you're learning more about yourself from the experience of just having the opportunity to connect with people.
Exactly. Like I think if I didn't put myself out there and actually go on these physical dates, I would never learn, and I would not know what I would want. Yeah.
I do really like this question of like, what does success look like for you on a dating app? Because I've never really directly asked myself that, and I think I've just default to the thought, Helen, like you're saying, that, oh, obviously I'm looking for like marriage or like a serious relationship. But if I really think about it, I think that for me, success in dating in general is being able to have an interaction with someone where I genuinely feel like I could see myself with this person as my permanent partner. And it's devastating when it's A, not reciprocated, or B, when it doesn't work out. But me being able to just emotionally feel that for someone, to me, is a win. And I think this is something that maybe for women and for men who, if you're like actively looking for a life partner, meaning you're at a point in your life where you're ready for that, and maybe you're a little older, so you're like going through kind of multiple rounds of this, it is very easy to feel jaded from dating apps where you just kind of emotionally turn off. And you can't, Helen, you said this earlier in the episode, where the only way to really combat loneliness and to have a true connection is to be vulnerable and open, right? And like for me, success is if I'm able to achieve that vulnerability through an app and have an interaction with someone, even if they don't reciprocate or if the timing doesn't work out, to me, I would still define that as success. And I have had that happen through Bumble. Like I've had a couple of dates with people and it didn't work out, but I got to a place emotionally where I was like, wow, I could see myself with this person forever.
Yeah. It sounds like for both of you, you're like learning about yourself through the process of whether it's like a rejection or something that doesn't work out, at least you're still gaining something from it about yourselves too.
Yeah.
I will say that like for me, being someone who's engaged on a dating app and also like a complete noob at this still, I think something that I've found like successful to me is when you're like building up your profile, you really do have to like remind yourself what is important to you and how do you want to like show up in the world. So it's kind of nice to like build this like almost like a profile about yourself. Like how do you want to present yourself to strangers? And even if I'm not getting like a bunch of matches, I think it's still empowering to feel like I can reach out to someone super random who I think that I would never, ever connect with. And the way that I kind of see it is like, if, for example, we were at a club and we were in line like for the bathroom or something, like I'm tapping someone on the shoulder to say, hey, I like your hair. Yeah. Like that's what it feels like. That interaction of like swiping on someone and maybe connecting with someone. It feels like a low investment, low commitment type action, right? And so when I think about it that way, I'm like, oh, that's not that scary. Like then I can just, start swiping more right and build the confidence also of knowing that it's not like if you get rejected, it's the end of the world. So it's yeah, that was like my experience with swiping on Bumble as an engaged person.
You bring up a great point, which is that creating your profile is an act that can be one that makes you kind of really self-reflect. So not only are you thinking about yourself and like how to best represent yourself, but then psychologically we're also thinking we're trying to attract like, someone to want to swipe right on us. Do you ladies have any tips that you've kind of come up with as you've like created your profiles?
What are some learnings, Helen, that you got in the past?
Since you just did this very recently, you're kind of like brand new, fresh eyes.
Well, I started off with like no about me section because it didn't give me any tips of what to say. But then as I was like swiping more and more, I was like, oh, people actually go in depth about it. And at first I had something like I'm an extroverted introvert and like something super basic. It's like I like to go hiking and stuff. And I was like, oh, I like how people go a little bit more in depth about like, I like to play volleyball, or these are the things that give me energy and that I can thrive off of. So then I went back and tried to like revamp my about me section a little bit more, but I don't have that many tips. So maybe you ladies, what are some tips that you ladies have for building your profile?
Well, the first thing I think of is like photos. Like for me, like it's having a wide variety of different photos. Like obviously for me, like your first photo is like the banger. It's like this photo's gonna be like, like that's what's gonna attract the person. And then like, you know, throwing in photos like that, you know, showing that you're active and you're social. So like maybe photos of you with your friends, but not having so many photos of that. They're like, they can't spot you in the photo. So throwing in like different aspects of your personality. And like for me, it's like showing one photo, like me and my friends, like we're out drinking because it shows that I do like to drink. Another one is like maybe me, you know, traveling. I like to travel, like kind of showing bits of your personality in the photos and having a variety. Is that the same for you, Janet?
Yeah, I think there's definite strategies to the photos because you have a finite number of slots, right? And I think Mel's very right. Like the first photo should be the one that, knowing that if they see nothing else, this is literally the kind of priority thing. And are you communicating yourself in a good way? So I would say always the first photo should be just you. You should not have another person. It should not be in a group shot because it's hard to tell which one you are. But then it's important to do a combination of photos of you and other friends. One thing that's a big turnoff for me for guys is if I see 3 or more selfies. I think this is probably like a thing that people talk about, but especially if it's like a bathroom, just like naked body ab shot, then already, I mean, one is fine. Even one is, you know, kind of, you know, but if it's like, if most of your photos are just of that, I get really turned off by that. So I think having a mixture is definitely good. For me also, I think in terms of filling out the details, I find that it's really good to talk about any part of yourself that might be polarizing and to just put it out there. And what I mean by that is like, for me, for example, I've seen guys that will just straight out say like, I don't like vegetarians or vegan type people. And I'm not a straight vegetarian or vegan, but then I know, okay, we're like, lifestyle is never really going to work that way, right? Or sharing you have kids. Like that's something that I think just putting it out there. So for me, I care about like mind, body, spirituality and like health. So I put that on the forefront in my writing and my description because I'm like, if someone's really against that, I'd rather us not waste our time to like figure that out in the chat. You know, so kind of putting that out in the details.
Actually, yeah, you're right. Like now that you ladies are kind of walking through the details that are important, I would agree that like the photo actually makes a huge difference because I do swipe left on like bad quality photos because I'm like, I don't know if I want to be friends with you. You can't take a good photo. Like the ones that are just completely like their face is blown out and all you can see is their eyes. And it's like a close-up shot of their face. I'm like, what? I don't understand. And there's a lot of those out there. So yes, a good photo. And like you said, Janet, not all selfies. And then I think the effort of putting in detail into the actual profile itself shows that you are invested in wanting to make a connection through Bumble.
Yes.
And I agree that like the people who put more detail about me, I'm just like, oh, you want to be transparent. You know what you want. You're not like kind of wishy-washy about like what you're looking for. Like, cool. Do I want to connect with you or not? And the more detail seems like it's better.
I think putting down the details, like when I say polarizing, it's because like if you kind of put something generic like, oh yes, I like to go hiking and I like to like a lot of people will have those things, right? So finding the details about or sorry, but sharing things about you that could be a little bit contentious because it makes you stand out, right? It's a thing that will differentiate you. And not to say that you're like trying to stand out. I mean, you are trying to stand out, but it's also you want to attract someone that like is going to share similar interests. Okay, so I think we talked a little bit about some of the things that we're looking for when we're swiping, but you know how within the setting up of the filters, there are certain things that you can actually designate so that you only see certain profiles. So I think I talked about earlier, for me, one of the things that I started changing is like the distance. It's like from like 5 to 100 miles. So I used to keep it within like pretty close to LA. And we all know because LA, they say, even though it's like 10 miles going from east side to west side, it takes forever. So I recently did open up the distance though to kind of be more open-minded or have a bigger pool of people. How about for you ladies, what are kind of your thoughts on the filters?
I do feel like I gravitate towards certain dating apps because I'm able to filter ethnicity. I do think a similar cultural background or upbringing is really important to me because I feel like they understand my values and like have similar like habits and like things they just understand coming from the same background and culture. So I do think ethnicity is something I prefer to have filtered or have a preference for in my dating apps. Age is something I think I mentioned earlier, how I used to just always set it for like, my age, 29 to like 35. But then I'm like, maybe I'll just set like maybe a little bit younger just to see. Like I know, like I said, I didn't want to date younger anymore, but I brought it down 2 more years and I got a lot more people coming in. So I'm like, oh, maybe I'll see.
What does that tell you about yourself, Mel?
Don't call me a cougar. Well, Helen, how about you? I feel like even, for a friendship, like a friend filter, like what are you looking to filter?
So I filtered for the age 28 to 38. Like a 10-year, is that normal? Like a 10-year gap?
Yeah.
Is that
that's a pretty good approach.
Yeah.
That's usually my approach, usually.
So I said 28 to 38. And then for distance, initially I had it at 20 miles, but then I saw a lot of people were coming in from like Long Beach, and I was like, there's just no way that's gonna happen, right? Like if like 50% of the people that I'm being fed are from Long Beach or somewhere where I don't have a car right now, so I can't really get out there easily, and it's gonna be hard for them to get to me. Then I'm like, okay, maybe 12 miles. So that's where I set my distance at. The ethnicity filter, Mel, I completely get where you're coming from. I feel like each of our communities have very nuanced things that we're like kind of looking for. I think it'd be nice if there was a filter that didn't explicitly exclude like a certain type of ethnicity. If, for example, I want to see only like Asian people on my app, then maybe it feeds me like 70% of the people are Asian. Like there's a percentage that you can kind of like,
so it just skews it instead of being exclusive.
like a scale.
That's a good suggestion.
Because I don't, like for me, I want to be very open-minded with this type of an app, but at the same time, I feel it is easier for me to maybe connect with someone who has similar background and cultural upbringings and all of that as me. So completely get where you're coming from, Elle.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. I would say for myself personally, I have dated like a lot of different ethnicities. So it's less of a distinction that I would have a desire to control. However, I have also gone through periods where I did kind of focus more exclusively on like guys of the same ethnic background as me, like for the same reasons that Mel said. So I would like there to be that option, at least in the app. I think it would be my kind of perspective, I guess. And then similar to Helen, my age gap is also about 10 years. Wait, how old am I? I'm 30. Actually, no. But so my gap of 10 years is I'll go 1 year less than me, so like 33, and then I go up to 43. So I'm trying to hit the like later 30s and then early 40s. And I think those are the main ones in terms of like actual things that you can control. But knowing like, so we talked about kind of the filters that you can adjust, right? But what about when you're like evaluating the profile? Are there certain things that you kind of look at and you kind of automatically make snap judgments about?
I think in a perfect or in a fantasy world, it'd be really cool to filter by like Myers-Briggs or love language. So I feel like that's extremely important in a relationship, or maybe even horoscopes or star signs. Like, I don't know, like I'm not a strong believer in horoscopes. I think Janet is more so than I am. But I do avoid Scorpios because I feel like they just don't match with my Pisces personality. But I don't know. How about you guys?
I was actually, I know Scorpios generally have a bad rep, but I have a lot of my very good friends are also Scorpios. My kind of take on this is also like different sources have different things to say about good or bad matches, but almost anywhere, if you have 2 signs, you can find some source that supports that they're a good match or B, a bad match. Like it goes all over the place. I hear you, Mel, because I feel like I also have like almost like a subconscious bias. One thing I do, instead of being kind of turned off by certain signs, that when I'm going through and I see someone who is a sign that's similar to a friend that I have, I usually perk up because I'm like, oh, I know that like for example, one of my really good friends is a Gemini, and I dated a guy in the past who was Gemini. So I'm like, oh, I feel like generally I get along really well with Gemini. And then Sagittarius, like Helen said, you and my sister have the same birthday. Oh wait. No, like a day apart. But so I have like cousins and 2 people who are Sagittarius. So I'm like, oh, okay, that also. And my first boyfriend was a Sagittarius. So I kind of like in that way, I'm a little bit more biased towards certain signs.
That makes sense. Is that your filter though? Don't you get like 2 free filters when you first sign up?
There's like automatic filters, and then I think if you want advanced filters,
Yes.
You can go in. Yeah. So I don't. Yeah. In terms of the actual filtering, I really only filter out age and distance. Yeah. Everything else, I kind of leave open, and then I evaluate based on the entirety of the profile.
How about you, Mel?
Well, I definitely look at, honestly, drinking and exercise activity level.
Me too.
Because
Actually, I said those too.
Right?
Yeah.
Because like for drinking, okay, I'm definitely more lenient. I think in our first season, I was like, yeah, I want this guy to like hang with me in Vegas. Honestly, I'm actually okay more so now if my partner doesn't drink as much, but I do think I enjoy going out and having like an alcoholic beverage from time to time. So I prefer them to like kind of drink. And for exercise, I'm not super active, so finding the right balance of like what am I putting for myself and what am I asking for in a partner. So I think I put moderate.
Okay.
So 'cause when I see guys who are extremely active, like go hiking and climb mountains, I'm just like, there's no way this is gonna work.
Yeah. For my filters for those, I actually put drinking socially, which I think is the moderate one. Is it? Yes, I think so. And then exercise activity level, I put active. Because I think the part of it, I do want, if I were to meet a friend on Bumble, I would want us to maybe like go on a hike and like go for a drink or something. Otherwise, I'm like, what else do people do for dates? So
Watch a movie. I don't know.
I guess, but you can't really talk during movies either. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that will change, but that is my initial reaction to those filters too. So I think it'd be fun if we take one of your profiles, your Bumble profiles, and optimize it. What do you ladies think?
Yeah, we actually got a lovely list from Bumble of helpful tips for things to put on your profile or ways to kind of to set up your profile so that it has a higher likelihood of being successful. Can I volunteer, Mel?
Honestly, so as we were talking, I was looking through my Bumble profile and I realized like I haven't updated it in years. So I was like, oh wow, like this photo's from a few years ago, or I haven't even like wrote out certain prompts. So sure, I will volunteer my profile for you guys to optimize.
Okay.
Awesome.
Send
Okay.
over your screen cap, your profile, and send it over to us. We'll take a look.
Okay.
Well, while you're doing that, so Bumble did send us this list of like profile optimization things, right? How to set up your profile. And some of the things that they mentioned, which we will look out for in Mel's profile. So this is data that is shown to make a successful profile, a 20 to 30 word bio. So I guess we'll count the words in Mel's bio. 3+ photos, either a dating intentions and or healthy or social lifestyle badge. What is the badge?
I think it's like the items that you select in your profile and it shows up
Oh, I
as a
see.
badge.
Okay.
And then their data also shows that the profiles that get the most swipes contain phrases suggesting that they want to meet new people, or it calls out a specific trait they relate to. So, for example, fun fact, women like to talk about a sense of humor. And if you're an emoji user, they also have a bunch of different emojis here that are popular among women's profiles as opposed to men's profiles. So it looks like for women, there's heart emojis, the female sign, cameras, and it looks like a Shiba Inu puppy. And then for guys, there is a laughing emoji, a camera, a sunglasses face emoji, and then also the American flag, which is
And they
interesting.
both have this like, I don't know, like that emoji where you put your hands up like against your face and you're just like, I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like confusion.
Interesting. Okay, let's see if Mel has that in her profile.
Okay, so I sent everything over. Don't go hard on me. I don't have emojis, but just take a look.
Okay, let's see. First photo. Okay, so first off, my impression is that your hair looks super good. No roots are showing. You have a nice curl to it, and it like lands like nicely around. It frames your face very well. You look friendly. Your eyes are doing this like squint thing, showing that you're like smiling from within, like you're actually happy. You're not just smiling for the camera. It's also a good quality photo. Because I've seen a lot of photos out there that are just very like bug-eyed, or it's like a selfie photo in the bathroom, half naked or something like that. So props to you for that.
I appreciate the sweet comments on my profile, the picture, because that photo's from 2016.
And then it says that you are the head of community at a media company, which is still true because you're at ABG. I was like, oh, okay, you're ahead of something. That means you're legit. University of California, San Diego. Okay, educated. Good first initial reaction. I would continue swiping down on you.
Yes. And then as we get to your profile section, I'm not sure how many words you have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to say it's about 20. It looks like it's about 20, so looks like you barely just made them in. But and then she also shares that she's an ENFJ, so it's personal information. She talks about how Saturday nights are safe for drinks and dancing. Hip hop and throwback, please. Okay, so you specify your taste in music, which is good. Sundays reserved for food comaing and lounging in bed, binge watching TV shows. Okay, so I feel like you give a good snippet of your lifestyle and like what the day-to-day would be. And then below her, like the freeform written bio, she shows her height. She says that she works out sometimes. Her sign is Pisces. You also express that you never smoke. You do drink socially. She's looking for a relationship and she wants kids someday. So those are all really good details. And then the second photo is of her and Helen. So it's a nice photo of her with a friend. So we know she has friends. And you're eating noodles. So we know that you are a foodie and you like food.
But it's more like you're stuffing noodles into your face. Yeah. So is it suggestive?
Oh, a little flirtatious?
Was it meant to be suggestive?
No, not at all. I think it just shows that like I really enjoy food. Plus, I also realize it's like it shows that I'm in a like mom and pop type of vibe, versus like a fancy dining area with the wine. So I was like, I'm more of like a comfort girl where I don't need to indulge in like fine dining all the time. So I want someone or a partner that also enjoys like really good cheap food. But that was like, I guess that was what I was going for. And like, hey, I like to eat with a friend. I'm not always a loner. So like maybe I threw in a friend photo. As Janet was reading my badges, I was like, yeah, it's pretty accurate.
I would hope so.
That's true. Actually, you're right. Would you guys think my bio, or like the written part, is okay?
I mean, if I were to see that, I like it because ENFJ, I know a couple of other ENFJs. I'm like, okay, we could probably get along. And then I think the thing that got me was hip hop or throwback and some drinks and dancing. So you're like a fun person, but also like, yeah, food comaing and binge watching TV. It's like, okay, chill. Fun and chill is what I got. So I would probably continue scrolling down on your profile.
Okay.
The written part is specific enough that it shows personality, and I think to Helen's point, like those specific callouts resonates with a specific type of person, right?
Yeah.
Maybe one thing you could add is something more around like what you're looking for. So I know in the badges it distinguishes you're looking for a relationship, but one of Bumble's tips is like if you explicitly talk about like a thing that you're looking for, or like if you're looking for a long-term relationship, maybe that's a good thing to include, or like maybe say like a binge watching buddy or something like that.
That's a good point, Janet. Because I think in a previous, like maybe in an old profile I wrote that I took down because I feel like, oh, this is so generic. I was like, oh, like, we joke around about like our different types, and I think I said like, who's over the fuckboy phase or something like that. And I'm like, I think in my mind I was like, maybe that'll attract the fuckboy versus like, I don't know.
Oh, baits them.
Yeah. So
they'll take it as a challenge.
So I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't include that line.
You're also missing maybe an emoji, according to Bumble. But you do have a smiley face at the end. So it's like an old school emoji.
So, to go with the throwback hip hop vibe,
Oh, well thought out.
Yes. But Helen, you mentioned like you would be down to continue the profile. So I'm like really interested to hear what you guys both think of the other stuff.
The next two photos, Mel has some like gray concrete walls in both photos. But the first photo is of a very happy, smiley Mel. And then the next photo is like a very high fashioned, like I found a chair in the middle of this outdoor space and I'm casually just leaning back on it and looking at you like I'm either going to jump you or you're going to jump me. So it's a nice like juxtaposition. It gives you a lot of range of personality, and I also like the fact that you can take a good photo. Both of these are very good photos.
So as a friend, you would swipe. You're like, oh, you'd be interested in being my friend.
Yeah, because if it was only the second photo where you look like really intense, like you're gonna jump me. If all the photos were like that, I'd probably be like, maybe not. But because you also look like you're happy, and then the first two photos were like you like to eat with friends too. Yeah, I would continue scrolling down.
Okay.
Yeah, Mel has a very inviting, friendly smile. And that continues through her third photo. Is she's holding a youtiao. It looks like she's probably in Taiwan having like the Taiwanese breakfast. And then the fourth photo is kind of a silly one with her in like a giant Pikachu helmet mask costume thing. My one comment though, as I look at this profile holistically with the photos, is that you have beautiful photos, but I've heard the comment from guys before that when the photos look like kind of too nice, they get a little bit intimidated because it looks almost a little model-esque. And that probably was not I think, Mel, just because you work in social media, you're very like most of the photos that you take are very good quality, but even maybe one that's like a little bit more grungy or like, like I think might feel less intimidating for the guy. And then also maybe like another group photo. So like to give it some range. I think your second and your first photo actually look very similar, and they're very beautiful and they're very like inviting, but they feel a little redundant. So maybe if you added in like a group photo with like 5 other girlfriends or something like that.
Good comment. I have heard the comment about how you should always have some friends with you, maybe like one photo with like one friend and another photo with like a group of friends to show that you don't only have one friend. So yeah, that's a good point. Also, Mel, your photo with the Youtao, that one is definitely suggestive. You were like,
I didn't even think about that.
What? Really?
For those who don't know, a Youtao is like a long fried dough thing.
Yeah.
You know what it is, though?
And she's like sticking it almost in her eye.
I did get some comments saying like when people have saw that photo, they will react to that photo and like, oh, I love this. So they so when they respond to it, I'm like, oh, you guys know what this is, because like a Youtao is like Chinese, Taiwanese, like, you know, did like. I think only some certain people will know it. So if they react to it, I'm like, oh, you understand me.
But are they reacting for the right reason?
Good question.
We will never know.
That's true. But I think, no, you're right. But then, Jen, I think you bring up a good point, because like sometimes when I'm looking through photos to post, I'm like, oh, that looks too, like, is that too edited, or is that too like aesthetic, I guess? So I'm like trying to find photos that I have with a group of friends. But it's also the other argument is like my photos, all my girlfriends, I'm like, they're super attractive. So I'm like, what did they see the photo and they're thinking like, oh, that's her? That's not her? I'm like, ah, shit. Like, so if I have too many girlfriends in one photo, I'm like, okay, how do I balance it out?
Or a group photo with guys too. You could do a mix of.
Oh yeah, that's true. That shows like I befriend all the sexes, you know?
Yeah.
But for the Pikachu one, I actually realized, like, I tend to do this in all the dating apps. I like to throw in, so this is my way of counterbalancing, like, the edited photos. Like, here, I'm actually kind of silly. So, like, it's always, like, a trolley photo at the end. If you make it to the end, you know?
If you make it to the end, I like that. It's like an Easter egg.
I'm a surprise.
I would say that overall, I actually really like your profile. I feel like this is a very high quality, well thought out profile. And I don't know why anyone would not swipe right on you.
Maybe because I'm coming up too suggestive with the Youtao.
and the noodles going into your face, maybe.
Yeah. Or is it because Mel is you're being more selective on who you're swiping to, huh?
Yeah.
And that the connection in terms of connections.
That is definitely true. That is, yeah. I think you're actually quite right on that.
Is this profile consistent with all across all your dating apps, or do you curate it based on each app?
I will say that I'm lazy, and I like it's pretty redundant and repetitive. On across the dating apps, but I do notice though, like the reactions to the photos and stuff depend on the dating apps. Like for example, like I think that on some dating apps, like because I'm able to like there's more like a filter with like, you know, ethnicity, that they react a lot more to that Youtao photo because they know what that is, because it's an Asian dish, versus like some other ones maybe not as like responsive. But overall, like, I will say I do appreciate the responses to the funny photos. I think across the board, people have been like, oh, LOL, or that's funny. So I'm like, okay. I'm like, what? It's working to some degree. Not completely, because I haven't been on a date yet. But, you know, it's working enough.
Well, I like the suggestions that Janet had given you. So maybe if you were to update that, maybe we can see a month from now if you get more swipes.
Yeah, I'll definitely keep you guys updated. I think Janet gave some really good responses, and she is a pro. Most of her successful dates have...
I don't know. I'm still single. I don't know if that's very pro.
But I feel like you're able to get a lot of dates through Bumble and the other apps. So I feel like I need to like edit my profile definitely a little bit more. So I'll keep your advice, and I'll definitely consider it, and I'll update you guys along the way. Maybe I'll even share like my preliminary profile with our followers, since they could see what we're describing. That's maybe kind of embarrassing, but whatever.
I think that's just your way of trying to get more people to look at your profile. That too, yes, it is.
I can't confirm nor deny that statement. But I think it was extremely helpful that Bumble were able to like to give us some tips. I feel like not a lot of dating apps will like share all these like kind of insights with us. So really appreciate Bumble for sending us their profile optimization. Those are extremely helpful. We'll definitely consider that.
All of us are always on the search for connection, and especially during this time when we're feeling extra lonely with social isolating. So whether you're looking for a romantic relationship, a friendship, or a network, hopefully you can find that through Bumble. We also have a couple of other partnerships that we'd love to share with you guys. Other ways to connect if you're looking for some online counseling or therapy, we have a partnership with BetterHelp. You can find all the codes and links in our show notes.
You can find us on all the podcasting platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Subscribe and leave us a rating and review at Asian Boss Girl. And if you'd like to support us through monthly donations, you can do so at anchor.fm/AsianBossGirl/support. We are also very active on social. Our handle is at Asian Boss Girl. Let us know you're listening by taking a screenshot on your phone, sharing on your IG story, and tagging us. Include something related to your dating life online, or even maybe a snippet of why you might be feeling lonely during this time of staying at home and in quarantine. And we will restory it on our own Instagram. Also find us on YouTube, where we have started posting some vlogs. Subscribe at Asian Boss Girl.
And again, thank you to our super talented editor, Michelle, for working all her magic on our episodes, including this one. We'll see you again next week on Thursday.
Bye.